Yeah, that's right. I got the Nikon Z8 for $2,000. Let's talk about it. I got this Nikon Z8, which is right here in my hand, for $2,000. So I'm going to tell you a little story about how I got this Nikon Z8 for $2,000. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a little history on how I became a Nikon shooter. Probably about a few years ago, I was doing a lot of international trips, and I was always using my phone going on these trips and taking photos, and I just wanted something with a little bit more better quality. So that led me and started my search actually of just trying to find a better camera, of just trying to take better quality photos just for my vacations with my brothers when I went internationally. And I ended up finding this right here, this Nikon little AW120. This is the camera I ended up finding. I bought it, I liked it. It did what it did. It was nice, waterproof. I actually still use this to this day, as I actually just came back from Curacao using this camera. I still use this today. It's a fun little camera to use. So anyway, so I ended up getting that, took some better pictures. So that kind of led me down the rabbit hole of like, oh, now let me get something else a little bit better. So I ended up getting like the D3100 right after that, or the D3200, one the other. And then from there, I was like, well, I want to get something with a little bit more better quality. And at this point in time, guys, this is when I'm really starting to jump into landscape photography. That's how I really started my whole journey into photography, was actually landscape, just because I wanted to take better landscapes when I went on these international vacations with my brother. So that's what kind of just led me down to the rabbit hole of just getting better quality. So after the D3100, I ended up getting the D7RIII, which I absolutely love that camera. Of course, these are all crop sensor cameras, and I did like the quality. I did a lot of good landscaping photos with that, but again, I was still just looking for more better qualities, because some of the photos that I took just wasn't that good enough. And I'm gonna pop some pictures up of what I did with that D7200. But beyond that, me doing research, following down the rabbit hole, I found out that I really needed a full frame camera. So that when I bought the Nikon D750. Absolutely love that camera. Did a lot of good things with that camera. Definitely a lot of good landscapes. Actually, I'm going to show up a picture right now that's still my favorite photo to this day that I took when I was in Paris with my brothers, and my brothers in the frame there. But this is absolutely my favorite picture that I took of all time, and has nothing really kind of captured. And I guess it's more nostalgia purposes as well. But anyway, so beyond that, I was using that camera very well. And this is when people started asking me about, do I shoot with people, right? Because at this point in time, it's still just a bunch of landscape. So enough people asked me, and I was like, you know what, let me just try to dive into this whole portrait thing, started learning how to try to shoot people. And then from that, is the rest is history of how I became a portrait photographer. I haven't done landscape photography in a very long ass time, but that's how I kind of venture off into doing, portrait, and this is where I'm leading up to this day. So anyway, after I was using the D750 for a while, that's when the announcement came in about the D850. So I was like, hey, why not just go ahead and buy the D850? Again, I just been in this for a while. I was barely into portraiture. I was still doing I was still heavy in the landscaping industry, landscape side of photography, but I was definitely in portrait at this time. So I was like, hey, let me get the D8 750. You got 45 megapixels. I was watching a lot of big YouTube landscape photographers like Surge, and just a lot of them. This is a few years ago, so I can't remember. It was mostly Surge that I was really watching back then. So I was just really like, oh man, this is really interesting. I get this, I can get more megapixels, blah, blah. Man, I did not know that a higher megapixel was going to change my life for the rest of my life. And I would never ever shoot on anything less than 45 megapixels, because I just love all the detail, all the crispiness into it, or what the case may be. But anyway, let me get back to the story. So I bought the D850, I bought that, pre-ordered it, got it, had a good time with that. And then after that, after a while, that's when the mirrorless game started popping off in around 2020. I guess a little bit before that, like 2019, the whole the mirrorless wave was kind of really coming hardcore. And I just really wanted something, because at this time I'm really dove in deep into portrait photography. I was like, oh man, the autofocus will definitely be, crucial and game changer for me, because at this point in time I'm on D850, right? And I'm more into portraiture now at this point in time. So I'm like, man, I would really like the autofocus. And that's when the Nikon Z7 and Z6 was announced, and I really wanted those cameras, but they was just too expensive. I wasn't willing to pay that much money, because I just had the D850, so I wasn't really paid that much money. So long story short, I had my D850 for a couple years, and then a local photographer ended up reaching out to me and was like, hey man, I got a Z7, I'm not liking it that much for wildlife photography, because he was a wildlife photographer. He's like, I'm not really liking it a bunch, or whatever the case may be. And I was like, hey, that's perfect, because I'm actually looking for a Z7. I want to kind of get into that realm of a Z7 mirrorless, because I'm with the autofocus and stuff. So we end up just swapping out cameras. I gave him my D850, he gave me the Z7, and that's what I've been having ever since then. I think I've done that around 2019, if I can't really remember. Around 2019, maybe 2020 is when I made that switch over to mirrorless, and now I have been with mirrorless ever since. Now, as you know, guys, I just shot with the Z8 actually not too long ago. Video right here. Actually, I'm gonna tell you exactly what I said in that video.
As you can see, guys, this is my first time using the Z8, man. I really definitely enjoy it, man. Just the technology in it and the autofocus alone is just 10 times better than my Z7 that I've been originally shooting for. Now, again, guys, we all do know when this video comes out, we're still waiting for the Z6 III or maybe a Z7 III. And then from there, I'm going to kind of make my purchasing decision, because I hope they come out with a Z7 III. That's kind of more on the focus photo wise instead of like the Z8 that's right here, because the Z8 is pretty much a beast of a camera. It's all in one. But as you know, guys, I shoot with my Sony A7S III, and this camera is just a little bit too much for me. So that's one of the main reasons why I've been absolutely waiting for the Z7 III or the Z6 III to see what it's going to offer. But other than that, guys, I do love the camera. If they don't come out with anything, I'm definitely going to be looking for one of these on the used market.
So as you can see in that video, guys, I made my little claim about, how much of the Z8 is really a lot of camera for me, right? It's just too much of camera for me. With that being said, so this is when the story kind of gets involved. So with that being said, so right before we know that the Z6 III was all the hype, all the rumors going around, it was going to be announced, what the case may be. So I ended up getting a DM from a fellow photographer friend of mine, and he hit me up and he was like, hey, I'm selling a lot of my stuff. I need to sell it, blah, blah, blah. I'm selling the Z8, and he's selling like a bunch of lens. Actually, I just popped the screenshot there. I'm gonna keep his stuff private, obviously. I'm gonna pop it right up here, right here. So as you can see the message, he's like, hey, kind of blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm interested in the Z8, anything else? And he was telling me how much it was going on eBay, blah, and all this good stuff. So we end up exchanging numbers, and we end up just start talking about, about trying to negotiate the price. So that being said, after I talked to him, the very next day, Nikon released, this is the date that we're doing our press release where we're going to announce the Z6 III. So I was like, oh man, they're announcing the Z6 III. But remind you that when they released the Z6 and the Z7, they always did it together. They did it with the Z6 I, the Z6 II. They always released it together. Even though it wasn't like a lot of hype around the Z7 III, I was just thinking like, okay, it's just a lot of hype around the Z6 III. I'm pretty sure they're going to announce the Z7 III as well, just with it. So I was like, I'm just going to wait, So now at this point in time, I'm in a situation, because I got this seller just wanting to sell a Z8, and we're negotiating prices. And then I have the announcement of the Z6 III just next week, right? Whenever that was. So I'm like, man, this is a hard price. I'm in a kind of rough spot right here. So I reached out to Anthony and Mid guys. I reached them guys out, and I was like, look, man, I got an offer for a Z8, man. We're negotiating prices right now. And they was like, well, you just wait until next week until they announce it and trying to come back to him. I was like, all right, that sounds, I think I'm going to do that. But I was like, I think he's kind of in a rush to sell it. I really asked him, but I think he's kind of like in a rush to sell this stuff. I was like, but let me go back and ask him. And after we talked about it, whatever the case may be, and I asked him, I was like, yo, are you kind of in a rush to sell this? Are you looking to sell this pretty quickly? He's like, yes, I am. I'm like, oh man, that's just even put more pressure on him. After they said that, he said, I need to sell. So I was like, all right, man. So we just started negotiating prices. So he threw out a price, I threw out another price. So at the end of the day, we ended up landing on $26.50. We ended up landing on $26.50. He agreed to that. I agreed to that. Bam. So I ended up paying $26.50. I met him the very next day. Ended up getting the camera right here. The Z7 III, the Z8 right here, end up paying for it. Again, guys, the seller, he bought this brand new. He already sent it in for the recalls that they have for the eyepiece, and it was something else that they recalled. So he already sent it in. I had the paper. He had the paperwork with that. It was brand new, so it was less than over a year old, because I got this in June. So it was less than a year. I have less than around 2,000 or less shutter clips. So it's really, really great deal. Now, I said at the beginning of this video, as well as the title in this video, I actually got it for $2,000. And I'm going to explain to you how this really was $2,000. Now, as you know, guys, I am a Sony and a Nikon shooter, but mostly for all my portrait work, I always used my Nikon, and for the video work, I always used my Sony for all the video work, right? But I did, back when I told you in the beginning of this story, that I was wanting to do the mirrorless thing. I was really trying to get a mirrorless camera when I had my D850, but the Z8 and Z7 was just too expensive for me. Like when I looked on the used market, probably like a year later after they came out, like they was just too expensive for me, right? So I went on, and I really wanted a mirrorless. Like I really wanted a mirrorless, and I also wanted like a second body as well. So that's where I went off and I bought the Sony A7R III. I'm gonna pop that up right here. This is from my eBay receipts. This, you see it right here, the date when I bought it. At that time when I bought this Sony, it was absolutely a fantastic deal. As you see, guys, I got it for 1,300 bucks. A Sony A7R III for that time. I think whenever, I don't remember. I go to the screenshot says when I bought it. It was a great deal at that time, right? I got it for 1,300 bucks. I got it on eBay. It was actually used strictly for video. When I talked to the seller, he was strictly for video. So actually, when I got it, it had less than like 700 shutter clicks on it. It was an absolute steal for that, man. So that's the reason why I ended up actually getting the Sony for. With that being said, I had that now. Now I have 3 cameras. I had this. I still have my Z7. And then I had the Sony A7R III. So obviously, guys, I went ahead and sold my Sony A7R III. I ended up selling that for $650, right? I ended up selling it for $650. The same day when I ended up buying this, I went and sold the A7R III. Bam. So that's the reason, and that's how I ended up getting it for $2,000. So yeah, then the reason why I sold that and not my Z7 was simply because, again, I like the Nikon colors. Nikon colors, I love them. I love them. I absolutely love the Nikon colors for photography, guys. So I think that could have been played a part into me not like using the A7R III that much, just because when I went to go do and edit my photos, it was a little bit harder to, you know, get the same look from both of those files, from the Nikon to the Sony. And that's A7R III, you know, that's that old color science. It was really, really trash. It's been documented. So it's nothing new, right? It's just absolutely nothing new about that. So that's the reason why I probably veered away from that. And again, guys, I just like Nikon color science. I really, really do. I like their files. I think they're the best files in the game. So when I end up getting the Z3, it was, you know, with the Z8, it was absolutely a no-brainer to go ahead and sell the A7R III. One, because I wasn't using it no more that much with shoots, and then secondly, I can go ahead and keep my Nikon far as portraiture goes, and photography wise, I can keep it all the Nikon colors, and that's the reason why I end up selling my A7R III. It wasn't nothing wrong with the camera. The camera was perfectly fine. It worked perfectly good. I think it was a good chance for me to, you know, just bring all my photos back into Nikon, and I don't have to really worry about, you know, that color grading and trying to get them to match when I'm copying settings, because it was a little bit of hassle. Nothing I couldn't fix, but it sometimes was a hassle. But other than that, yeah. So that is the story time of how I end up getting my Nikon Z8 right here for $2,000. And shout out to that seller, man, because he definitely reached out to me, man. And as you seen in the message I showed you before, man, he definitely reached out to me, bro. And I really, really appreciate that. Guys, I'm gonna keep his information confidential because I didn't ask him about using it or anything of that nature. So I'm just gonna keep his information confidential. But I definitely shout out to him for even thinking about me, reaching out to me and asking me, do I want to buy, you know what I'm saying, his Nikon Z8, bro. And at this point in time, I'm really definitely loving it, guys. And to be honest with you, if it wasn't for him hitting me up with a deal, there's no, I'm perfectly fine with the Z7. Yeah, obviously, when I told you in that clip in Puerto Rico, yeah, I'm a little bit frustrated with it because it just don't hit focus. Sometimes, you know, the autofocus, it's always been bad. Even when it came with the update, they made it did jump it up like 10 folds when it came with the update like a couple years ago for the Z7. But it's never really been that good, right? So, but I dealt with it, right? I've been dealing with it for years. It did what I needed to do, right? That's all that really makes a difference. Yeah, did I miss some shots? Yes. In low light, was it really bad? Yes, it was. But at the same time, I was still get my shots. I might take some extra shots to get my shots, but I was still able to get my shots. And it was just a little bit slower process of doing it. So if it wasn't for him calling me and, you know, reaching out to me and asking them, if it wasn't for him reaching out to me, selling his Z8, then I would have been perfectly fine with my Z7, guys, and my Sony A7R III. I would have been perfectly fine. I've been fine for years. You know what I'm saying? Again, the only reason why I don't want this thing because it was just too much on the video specs, and I feel like I'll be wasting a camera with this much video specs to it just to keep it for photography wise, right? Now, that's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you ain't too jealous. Hope you ain't too jealous. if you are jealous, leave it down in the comment, man. Let's just talk about it, man, because I understand I just got lucky. I ain't gonna lie to y'all guys. I really just got lucky, bro. And I guess it's good for, you know, going out here networking with other photographers, because you never know when somebody was gonna DM you and ask you, hey, I'm selling this, would you like to get it? You never freaking know, man. So it's always good to get out here and network. You just never know, it might come back and help you out in the long run. So yeah, so I guess I have nothing to say, man. You know, if you like the work, please leave a comment, like, subscribe to my channel, man. And to the next video, guys. Peace.